So scientifically, we have been finding that science is catching up with what psychics and mediums and anybody with that knowledge of the esoteric has known for centuries, millennia. The first thing I'm going to talk about is generational curses. Now, those spiritual individuals, those with access to the Akashic records, messages from spirit, and a general connection to the divine and to their guides, know that generations can pass down information to their offspring and beyond. That is where a soul can experience something from a perspective that it's been going on in the family for many years, and each soul comes in and tries to address the karmic balance. Now, science has caught up in the sense that they now concede that there is something called epigenetic inheritance, whereby trauma, chronic stress, and environment can switch on or off genes that can be passed down through generations, and that's known as survival imprinting. So it's two sides to the coin. It's the soul energy side with the physical 3D world side. We've also got emotional memory. So emotional memory can be stored in the body. Now, trauma, stress, difficulties in life, that negative energy can be stored in your chakras, depending on what type of negative energy it is. And if you look into chakras, you can see many of the chakras, the issues that you find, the health issues that you find, can be linked directly to a chakra. For example, as a young person, as a child, I found it very difficult to speak out. I was in fear of confrontation, and also I very much was in fear of upsetting people and telling them they were wrong, whatever. So it took me a long time to find my voice, but in my 20s, before I'd really found my voice, that negative stored energy was held in my throat chakra. And from that negative energy, I found myself with a thyroid condition. And so that is a direct link from the fact that I wasn't able to find my voice. So now the scientific community concede that it's not just a brain memory through somatic research. They now concede that stress, environment, and what you're experiencing, negative energy, as we would say, as psychics or those that can read the Akashic records, those that can have a direct connection to the divine. The scientists would say it's now brain memory somatic research is those energies are stored in muscles, fascia, and the autonomic nervous system. So There we have sort of autoimmune diseases that can come out, cancer. And that's why you have massage therapy is a really good way of clearing negative energy blocks, because of all those stored in. I mean, who can argue that after a very stressful period and you go to a masseuse or a physiotherapist and they give you a good old pummeling, and afterwards you feel like a new person. So yeah. Also there's the negative energy that sort of is, for instance, maybe drawn to a certain area and festers, and that's where you can see other, let's call them parasitic diseases, that consume areas of your body and grow. So if you know what I'm saying there. Now, talking therapy, of course, is a really good way, spiritual or general therapies, talking therapies, counselling, psychotherapies, extremely good at dealing with those things and clearing chakras. And then you've of course got Reiki, which is the energy clearing and healing. I would suggest a combination of all of them. I don't think any one thing is advised. I think, just try a little bit of all of them to get that cleared until you know that you are feeling balanced in that chakra, in that area. So then we've got retrocausality. Now, these are the ones that are quite hard to get your head around. So the future changing the past, okay? So as psychics, we understand that the timeline that we live here on planet Earth is by agreement. So time, it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't happen in a linear fashion like we treat it here on Earth. And in fact, time is every event, every timeline is all happening in the now. Takes a bit of getting used to get your head around these things, because we are so conditioned to understanding it in just one way. But I'm there now. Took me a while, but I am there now. But the future changing the past now is something that is acknowledged by the scientific community. The observer effect, I think, is a really interesting one. They have found that you can change reality by observation. Consciousness affects the outcome. And that's come from experiments where they filmed or recorded the events from an experiment where it's been left to get on with it and someone's walked away, and then another experiment of exactly the same circumstances where they've observed it and they've seen a difference. And they've proved that by observing that experiment, by observing what was happening there, somehow the consciousness was affecting the result. I don't have details on how what it is, but you understand that that's the principle of it. And we know that positivity can be sent, can be pushed out. Love can be pushed out. Love can be sent on a spiritual pigeon going out to that person. We know that there's telepathy. We know that we can say, I can feel something's going to happen to this person today. I'm worried about them. I can feel their emotions from a distance. I need to call them. There's something going on. Of course, sending the love. Oh, I'm going to send them healing. There has been many experiments. One many years ago by Art Bell, who experimented with the collective consciousness. He's a coast-to-coast radio host he's actually passed now, but he did quite a few experiments where he asked all his listeners to manipulate the weather with their consciousness. So what he asked them to do was, where there were areas in the country who were very, very dry, unlikely to experience rain, he asked them to do a little rain dance and pray for some rain. Please, please let it rain. And he was staggered by the results, that each of those places that he had affected and had people, use their consciousness to request rain, all had rain within very short periods of time, like minutes, an hour, whatever, half an hour. So that he was satisfied that they had, with their consciousness, affected the weather. And he did others, but that was a particular weather experiment. And so this is the thing. Group prayer has been studied. Now, scientists, this is one of the science experiments, but scientists have experimented by picking some cancer patients and having a large collective pray for those particular ones and not the others. And they saw a marked improvement of healing in the ones that were prayed for. They were all randomly picked. So now scientists are seeing that the consciousness isn't just brain waves and brain power. There's also quantum entanglement. Particles once connected remain responsive across distance. Reality isn't separate or linear, it's relational. So one thing that pops in is, of course, twins. Twins can act in a very similar way, not necessarily through telepathy, but an egg that once is together in the womb and then it splits, then so they are essentially separate. Then one twin is adopted by one family, one twin is adopted by another family. Years later, twins get back together, they find each other by happenstance, and they acknowledge that they have similar actions, similar values, similar activities, similar skills. And it appears that they are, two halves of the same thing. But quantum entanglement shows under scientific studies that two particles that initially were together could be separated by an entire universe. And if one moves in a certain way, then so does the other. So then you have meridian points and acupressure, something that the ancient Chinese have known and practiced for centuries. Meridian pathways through the body influence the vagus nerve or cranial nerve, and there is a role in the autoimmune nervous system or autonomic nervous system. Meridian lines on land are also something. So we have our meridian points and acupressure points that can feed through to the vagus nerve and affect everything. We also have landlines, meridian lines on the earth, where certain lines meet on land. There will be an incredible energy point or portal there. So there is a lot of, let's say, the darker side of spirituality, where they will meet on those landlines and use the energy power from that portal in their ceremonies and celebration ceremonies. Okay, so there we go again with the power of the mind. Here we go again with the power of the mind, positive thinking and patterning and the rewiring of neural pathways. So with positive thinking, you can retrain those neural pathways. So when you have for instance, a person or a child that has been subject to much abuse maybe, or neglect, those pathways are being set out. And until that individual is taken out of that situation and put into a continual positive situation, then you can rewire that. So basically, in a spiritual sense, any love can heal a negative response, a negative pathway, a negative experience. Enough love and enough care and enough devotion to that cause will reverse or rewire the brain to a more positive default position, let's say. Beliefs shape your perception. So if I go out and it's not raining, but it's not sunshine, and I go, oh God, it's not very good weather. And then I walk into someone and I go, oh, it's not very good weather. And they go, I thought it was good weather because it's not raining. So it's a good day for weather for them, and it's a bad day for weather for you. So what you believe to be true shapes your perception, and then what you perceive shapes your response. So if I'm going out, I'm experiencing a day that is not sunny but not raining, I'm like, it's a good day, it's a good day, it's a good day for weather, I'm fine. My positivity will be buzzing around my brain, within my soul, within my heart, vibrating throughout my soul. It will radiate, people will see it, people will feel it. Some more than others, I guess, if you're sensitive, if you're not sensitive. However, that means that if I'm out and about and I see someone and they do something maybe that I wouldn't do, that I perceive as slightly negative, my response would be remain more positive and stay on a higher vibration because of my attitude, my belief, my perception of everything is going to be on a higher vibration. Therefore, my response will be, oh, I hope he's okay, and not, is he doing this to get my nerves? So yeah, then of course, that shapes your reality, doesn't it? I walk along, I've reacted in that way, that's my response. Therefore, I've shown him compassion, I've sent my energy of compassion to him. He will then receive it. Might not be enough, but it's certainly a start. He will receive that positive energy. He will receive that positive perception of him. And then my reality isn't affected. I'm not thinking it's him getting at me, doing it to wind me up. I maintain my positive vibration and I continue, and that's my reality. Nobody's touched me today. Nobody can touch me today. I'm going to remain positive. Anything that they do is about them, not about me, or I'm not going to take it on board. I'm not taking on their negative energy on board. And actually, I'm just going to throw some of my positive energy at them. Hopefully that will lift them up a little bit. And there we are. And then, of course, the visualization. Visualization activates the same neural pathways as physiological experience. Your body responds the same. So there we are. That's another scientific proof that somebody who goes on a strict diet and imagines themselves exercising will get the same results as someone who goes on a strict diet and does exercise. And that's something that's been scientifically proven with controlled studies and controlled experiments. So there we have science / spirituality. Now, this brings me, there was a really good link there, which I've actually forgotten, but there we are. I want to move on to, which I've touched on various things, but I want to move on to the subject of near-death experiences and other experiences similar. So, near-death experiences, NDE, out-of-body experiences, OBE, shared death experiences, SDE, and also I'd like to talk about terminal lucidity. Now let's talk about terminal lucidity first, because what that is many people over the years have watched and sat with relatives or loved ones who are transitioning to the afterlife, or going back to source, returning to the light, on their way out from this world, passing on. And in that time, they will have seen their family member riddled with disease, unable to move, unable to talk, sometimes unconscious, sometimes delirious. Then suddenly, like they are reversing the clock back, their inability to talk, walk, any brain damage that may have occurred, anything like that, completely disappears. And they sit up, they have full lucid conversations with their loved ones, they reminisce, their memories return, lots of different circumstances. And this shocks the family, thinking, well, they must be getting better. Some miracles happen, they're getting better. And this tends to be a time where they are close to crossing over and their soul is very much in between. Therefore, their soul has the strength and power to overtake the body and come through in those last moments to provide a goodbye, I would suggest it's a goodbye. It's a time when they are just able to just be lucid for that short period of time, to give those people a little bit of closure, a little bit of a goodbye message. And that is how I believe it occurs. It's the ability to transcend physical difficulties through the power of that connection with the divine. And this is how I believe that Yeshua, Jesus, performed his miracles. He was able, not as a part of terminal lucidity, but a part of being so directly attached to the realm of the divine in a highest vibration that he was able to transcend the physical in order to perform these miracles. So talking about science and evidence, we have, I would recommend a book by somebody called Simon Bown. Now, Simon Bown does a paranormal and afterlife podcast, but he has done many interviews and studies on near-death experiences. And he has recently put out a book that's called Verified Near-Death Experiences. And the good thing about that is there is many testimonies of those that have come close to death, have died essentially. They have had their hearts have stopped, their brain activity has stopped, so they have flatlined in every way, medically flatlined in every way. So physically they are dead, and the medical people around them are absolutely, they're dead. There's no life whatsoever. They are dead. And then during that time, these people experience a way of experience traveling or appearing in the light, towards the light. Now, lots of people have different tailored experiences, but there are some a lot of similarities. So people's religion will come into play. So you have a Christian that would come into contact with Jesus. You may have a Buddhist that comes into contact with Buddha, and various other deities and religious figures. Sometimes you have someone who isn't not necessarily a religious figure, or maybe a Catholic that comes into contact with Buddha, or an Indian god. So it's not set in stone. The biggest impact usually as well is those of atheist people who have absolutely no belief of life after death, that find themselves going through a tunnel of light, and then coming to the end and finding themselves in this glorious environment. Or they'll be in a void, a black velvety void with no light, but they will, sometimes they report feeling scared because they don't know where they are, what's this, but they are so aware that they are conscious, they are still them, they are still their personality, they still hear their voice in their head, that nothing has changed in respect of consciousness, but they do notice they can't feel their body, or they're without pain, they're without any kind of physical negativity. They're also with if they're scared, that can pull them back, but mostly their fears disappear and they experience a very peaceful, warm, wonderful feeling of unconditional love, or a extremely peaceful feeling of contentment. And some might see a pinpoint of light in the distance, and as it travels towards them, they are enveloped with this unconditional love. There's many different stories out there from near-death experiences, and a time where I felt particularly low in my life, I started listening to them all, and it absolutely gave me such an amazing uplift to hear. And what it helped me truly understand is that once we move on, or before we are here, we are aware, very aware of Source and the unconditional love that is surrounding us by every soul. We are not alone, and they are there. And even though we can go through life feeling that we are alone, we don't have any support, we don't have anyone that cares, we have no love in our lives, it is a fact that if we look deeper than individuals and how they treat us on earth and look into the energy source and the life force that we have come from, we will receive that unconditional love and that feeling of being surrounded by support and love, and that we are certainly not alone. So once you are experiencing that, you can accomplish anything, because you don't need people. You don't need people to treat you right. You don't need people to be in a certain way, although it obviously enhances your experience on earth. You don't need anybody else's help, because you are divinely loved, you are divinely supported, and you do not ever lose that. No matter what you do, it's unconditional. You don't have to be a good girl or boy. You don't have to be charitable. You don't have to be anything, because even those who have chosen dark paths within their lives are still valued the same and treated with unconditional love and support by Source. Now that might rustle a few feathers, but the reality is if we move into that space where we believe that we are all equal and we are all on a different journey, we can be proud of our achievements, where we've lifted ourselves, we've lifted our souls, we've grown to the point where we are able to give, to care, to be unconditionally loving, but not in a way that makes us feel superior over those who aren't able to do that, because we wouldn't look at a small baby and say, I'm better than you because I can feed myself, I can use a knife and fork. They're just young souls. They're just baby souls learning baby lessons. And if we give them more understanding in that way, it is so much easier to not take it personally when they behave in a certain way. So it's been really helpful to me in my life to understand that and to see it in that way. And again, our perspective shapes our reality. So I've spoken already about people's testimonies and how they can be gaslit and told they're crackers, crazy, nuts, off their rocker. But when you hear somebody's testimony of a powerful experience and how it's altered their life, which without a doubt, scientifically acknowledged, people who experience near-death experiences, NDEs, they encounter life-changing it's a life-changing experience. And once they have come back, returned after, some people, I've heard of a body that was they had passed, they had no heartbeat, they had no brain activity, and they were certified in that way. And then they woke up in the morgue in their body bag, completely fine, felt like $1 million, felt fabulous. Was actually, I was that man actually fine. I'm fine. Obviously, the mortician or the morgue attendant would have had a bit of a heart attack. But so where's he been all that time? Now, some people report of living whole lifetimes, and coming back after minutes, because there is no time, remember. Everything's happening now. So in those moments that he was past, he carried out, or he or she, I can't quite remember what it is, but he or she had carried out 2-3 different lifetimes. I was a doctor and I had a marriage, I had children, I raised my children. Every minute of its life was lived. And then they had another lifetime, and every minute in that lifetime was lived, birth to death. And then they came back and they were told they'd been dead for, 3 minutes, 14 minutes, something like that. So that's a really good example of time not being linear. It's all happened in that moment. And it's a bit like dreams, isn't it? You can drift off, you can have a really lengthy dream. And when you wake up, you realise you've only been asleep for a short period of time. Because when you are dreaming, quite often you are leaving your body. So that takes me to out-of-body experiences. Now, astral projection, out-of-body experience. Now, some survivors of mistreatment, should we call it, talk of this as disassociation. So whilst they are in a position of extreme mental, emotional, physical pain, they disassociate and travel in order for their body, their brain, their emotions to cope with what they're dealing with. So that's something that it's usually child adversity that can help them do that. Although I'm sure some adults have the ability to do that or find themselves doing it. And that can be learned. Now, so there are different names for it. Out-of-body experience, and then we have the astral travel, and also remote viewing. So that's more the action of what you would do whilst you were out of body. Remote viewing can be a couple of different things. It can be out of body, where your soul goes traveling and goes to an area. And sometimes you can be viewed by others as a solid being, or sometimes maybe more, a translucent being. And then there's also the ability to psychically remote view an area, which is sort of tapping into a realm where you can view it, see it. So out of body, a lot of people can experience an out of body experience, an OBE, before they embark on an NDE. Powerful pharmaceuticals can sometimes induce an out of body experience, OBE. Then we also have shared death experience. Now, like in terminal lucidity, you have your loved ones sat at the side of somebody who is passing. And sometimes on the moment that that soul leaves its body and passes and moves to the spiritual realm, they are accompanied by the living being, the living person. And they both experience the same thing. They are together as souls. And then that individual that is due to carry on in this realm, in this lifetime, would then see their relative off. Bye, off you go. And then they would return to their body, back in the hospital, back in the place where they were observing their relative. And doctors have reported this. That they have experienced shared death experience, SDEs, and there are large studies on this too. Trying to think of the lady. There's so many. Oh, maybe that's for another time. I haven't got a good memory, especially for names. So yeah, that's the shared death experiences, and many people have had. Sorry, that's Basil again. They've had these experiences, and they've shared their testimonies. There's a few of these stories which I just absolutely love, and I just wanted to share too, whereby they're just experiencing a celestial experience whilst on Earth in the 3D world. One is actually a near-death experience story. So he passed. He went to he went to Source. He had a full experience there, and he met a man who he didn't know, and he said, "Please give." I can't remember the name, but let's call her Maxine. "Please give Maxine my love and tell her I'm okay." And then when he came back, he was explaining to his daughter everything that happened, plus, oh, this man, he said he's an older man, he looks like this, blah, blah, blah. And he said, "Please give Maxine my love." Well, I don't know any Maxines. What am I going to do? Anyway, then one day his daughter was helping clear out some stuff, came across a card in a drawer, and that card was for a hairdresser. And she said, Where's this from? He said, "Well, I don't know." She said, "Where did you find it? In the drawer?" "No, I've never seen it before. What is it?" "Oh, well, it's a card for a hairdresser." "And I think I might have found your Maxine, because look, this hairdresser's called Maxine." So he says, "Right, book me an appointment." So she books an appointment. She goes in, she sits down, she starts talking to Maxine. He sits down, he starts talking to Maxine. He starts to tell her that what had happened, I think it was a brain aneurysm, something like that. It's quite serious. And he said that he had met a man that had said, tell Maxine I'm okay and that I love her. And she said, oh, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah, it's funny. And he said, yes. And he then received downloads that he had, he was seeing a man on a porch, a white porch, obviously in America, a white porch. We don't have porches here. Well, we have storm porches, but we don't have all those gorgeous porches where you have the chair and you can sit out and look at the stars. No, we don't have that there here in London. But he was on his porch and he said, I can see him doing something with, I think it was red and blue ribbons. And she said, that is my grandpa. That is my grandpa. Grandpa used to sit on his porch and we all used to help him. He used to make ribbons for his, I think it was the Salvation Army, not Salvation Army, it was something along those lines, some type of army connection to a group of charitable people. He used to sit and make the ribbons up to sell for charity, for his charity every year. And she was in floods of tears. She instinctively knew that that connection that he had made was genuinely her grandfather. So he brought that back and passed his message on, which can actually be something with mediums, because you have sometimes the soul that's passed needs to get a message. They want to get a message. Come on, please tell this person. Please tell this person. And you're like, yeah, all right. I don't know what person. I don't know who. And it's all a bit of a, all right. I will. I'll look out for it. And then when you finally pass that message on, and it resonates and it hits, and they know what you're talking about, it all makes sense. You're like, phew, thank God for that. Thanks, right, it's all done now. Thank you very much. Thank goodness. So, very similar. Now, let's just see. I've written some notes here and I don't understand what it's saying. Anyway, let's move on. So, there was now, I've just remembered, I'm not sure what that says in fact, but I've just remembered another one that I haven't written down. Now, there was a lady who was travelling and it was heavy snow outside, heavy snow. And so she was driving along and she saw a man, a young man in his 30s, who she was slightly older, this lady, and he didn't have warm clothes on or anything, and he was stood by the side of the road hitching a ride. So she stopped and she pulled up and she said, quick, get in, you must be absolutely freezing, like, just, what are you doing out there? Get in, where are you going? So he said, well, I'd like to go to this area. And she said, well, I actually passed that area, so I'll drop you off at the outskirts. So he says, yes, please, thank you very much, that'd be great. They have a conversation. Whoops. Set's falling apart. They have a conversation and he tells her, your life is about to change considerably. So she says, oh, well, what does that mean? Anyway, they have a full conversation in the time that she's giving him this lift. And in that time, he really has a mark on her, makes a mark. Anyway, she drops him off in the snow and it says, you sure you're going to be all right? You haven't got in warm enough clothes? Yes, I'll be fine. Thank you very much for the lift. And on he goes. And something strikes her, there's something slightly ethereal about this man. She opens the door to look out because he seems to just disappear. He disappears. And she's like, well, where did he go? So she gets out of the car and she looks around and he has vanished. and she looks to the side of the road where she stopped at the verge, and there is no footprints in the snow. There's no sign. The snow is white, pure, unimpregnated snow. And she concludes that it must have been a visit from an angel, and you could see why. Another story, and then I'm coming to a close. A lady who is travelling on a ferry, and a man comes up with a similar message. Your life is needs to be in service, to help people. And she says, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? He says, I'm Jesus Christ. I am Jesus, Yeshua. And she says, no, you're not. No, you're not. He says, yes, I am. I'm Yeshua. And here, if you don't believe me, have a look at this piece of paper. She looks on the piece of paper, and it contains every single question that she has had about life. And she is blown away, because how can there be all her personal questions about life, about everything she wanted to know? Why is that on a piece of paper with this stranger? She asks, can I keep this piece of paper? He says, I can't let you have the piece of paper, but now do you believe what I'm telling you? So with that powerful interaction, she takes the message and she goes on and experiences the changes that he suggested, as the other one did. I did forget to mention, but the other one experienced that change, working with the light, working in a much more spiritual way, teaching spiritually. So there we have just some really interesting, lovely stories, testimonies of people. And that's where I say, let's believe people. Let's take it that they're telling the truth, or their truth. Why should we be so sure or arrogant to think that we have the only opinion on reality? Everybody's reality is different. Everybody sees things in different ways. And we are simply creating this world that we live in by agreement. So that's what I thought I would talk about today. If you've enjoyed this, or if you're interested in this subject, please like and subscribe, and I will continue with more videos. So I hope you have a good week, and I'm sending my unconditional love to you. Okay? Thank you for watching. Hello, my beauty. So today I thought I would talk about proof of the afterlife. So for me, proof of the afterlife came from when I started to receive messages from my grandmother, who I'd lost not so long before. So a few months after she died, I started to hear her voice very, very clearly. And then she started to show me signs, she started to give me information. And when I checked it out, it seemed that it was correct. That grew to giving people messages when I was out and about. I was young, I was 24, 25, and I would go to bars and clubs and meet people and socialise, have a good time. And I would suddenly have a voice pop in, it's Grandad, tell him it's Grandad. So I would start giving messages, and they would sometimes be quite shocked. They would, their mouths would fall open. They would go, yeah, with the details that they were giving. So evidential mediumship. And that grew and grew. But I am not satisfied with a few coincidences. I'm a sort of logic. I like proof. Then I started to get messages whereby I would be, because I started to think, am I reading their minds? Where's this information? Am I just reading their minds? But then I got a series of information that they didn't even know, and they had to go and check out. And then it started to be like, well, it can't be reading their minds. I must be reading something from the universe, an overall, sorry, it's my pen, an overall, I can't even think of the word, but just an overall, an overview of what is happening in different areas. I was tuning into a frequency, and I just accepted that at that stage. But it's, you know, it took me a long time to really just trust in what I was hearing, and accept that it was, you know, it was the proof I needed. But obviously, you know, you can't convince people who don't want to be convinced, and people often choose the narrative that they find the most comfortable and the one that fits their life, their outlook the best. So, in that sense, scientists, although you do have all walks of life, you have scientists who are, sorry, that's the dog. Thank you, Basil. You have scientists that are sort of spiritual, you have scientists that are open-minded, you have scientists that are curious, but you also have a large body of scientists that are fixed in their opinions. They're the right-brainers. They don't accept anything other than what's proved. Sometimes you go to the doctors and you say, well, I think it could be this. This is, no, there's no proof for that. There's no proof for that. And to a certain degree, you have to have rules in science, I guess, in order to, you know, evidence, which moves me on to evidence of people. So what we've been taught to do through the global control of the elite and the paradigms that we are currently in, we've been taught to mistrust the individual's narrative, mistrust the individual's testimony. So when people came out and said, you know, I definitely experienced a strange thing, this is what I saw, I think it might have been an alien, I think it might have been a ghost, I think it might have been whatever, I experienced something that currently science says doesn't exist and doesn't happen, but I'm not mad, and I know that what I saw, I know what I saw. So with that would come a backlash of, you know, gaslighting. Oh, a bit crazy. You know, oh, look at this. It turned into, I don't know, globally. I think America has the Inquirer. We used to have the Daily Star. I think we do still have the Daily Star. It's the only thing left of the Sun. Well, there's other things that are owned by the same people, but the only thing left of that sort of ilk is the Daily Star now, and with crazy stories that mocked and gaslit anything that didn't tie in with this straightforward right-brained, isn't it? Is it left-brained? No, left-brained mental position of, you know, this has to be a certain way. So anyway, so that's just a little bit of talking about that. But moving into how science is now starting to turn around, although it's not blasted everywhere, because of course we've now got social media whereby different genres, different opinions have a platform. It does manage to get out there a bit more, but you won't see it in the mainstream as much, and it'll be a more alternative program, an alternative documentary. Of course, you've got the channel Gaia, which does explore all those things. That's why I do love the YouTube community, because you do have a certain amount of freedom. Although you aren't allowed to talk about certain things, and it is very, very controlled still, and it is very, it's owned, and it's owned by the elite, it's controlled by the elite. However, you do have freedom to a certain extent until you get too big for your boots, let's say.